Hi, and welcome to day 5 of Wealth Dynamics Masters. It's our final day, so congratulations for getting here. And really, it's been an amazing week together. I'm sure you'll agree. Thank you. Big thanks to all the mentors for everything that you put into it. And please do thank them as well. And obviously to all the participants for giving so much to each other as we've gone through this process as well. Today is presentation day, and the mentors will share with you exactly what that means, what the next steps are, and looking forward to seeing the results of all of your slides. So on this session today, I am going to bring all of this together. You will have noticed as we've actually gone through this week that there's been all sorts of breakthroughs, all sorts of shifts that are taking place. But what does it all mean? Like for this next year, and frankly, for the rest of your life, what could be the master's moment that you take away from the experience that you've been having this week? So I would love to share with you a few slides. And rather than giving you any big to-do right now, instead of that, what I'm going to do is share a little bit of a secret. And this secret here is one hidden in plain sight. The way I share this, there's a very, very good chance that some of you, as you listen to this, will find this secret quite unbelievable. It's one that I myself found pretty unbelievable when I first heard of it as well. And by the way, if you actually take the promises that we have gone through, there is an overlay of those promises and what are called the trigrams, which come from something from China called the Book of Changes. The Book of Changes was the book called the I Ching that was translated by Richard Wilhelm into German, first of all, and it was Carl Jung who was the first to publish it in the West. And it was actually from this book that he actually started talking about things like what he called synchronicity, which is how we synchronize with time. And amazing coincidences start happening. And when he talks about things like collective unconscious, about how everything is connected at a much, much deeper level than most of us actually realize. And all of this has actually come to light in the last 20 years as a result of the decoding of the human genome, when two groups at the same time on different parts of the world in the year 2000 realized that there was, when they actually got down to the source code of humanity itself, 64 codons, which are these 64 protein pairs here, 64 codons that actually make up our entire DNA sequence, and they are a match to the 64 hexagrams within the I Ching. So effectively 5,000 years ago, the Chinese decoded time, and they came up with the source code of time itself, and they basically have published it all this time, but it was always in Chinese. What now has happened is there's been an overlay between time and between us. So if you have heard of that saying from Albert Einstein, which is that time is just an illusion, although a very persistent one. Well, if time is an illusion, what does that make us? I'll tell you a story which really is what set me on this path that I'm on today. And it's why I keep on every day and every year and every month having this absolute obligation for why I'm here on this planet. And it happened when I was in a meeting with a venture capital firm that had given me already $3 million. The company's name was 3i, so it was all in threes after going to Trinity College, so it was all in threes. And it was when I was in Singapore, and I was just having, with my wife, my son Luke at the time, who was born on the 3rd, 1999, right? So it was all, and as you know, if you've ever, followed either Pythagoras or Nikola Tesla, everything's in threes, right? So Buckminster Fuller talks about the three being the unit of the universe, which I'm going to come back to a little bit later in this video. And it was a meeting I had where we had spent all the money on this publishing company I had, where we were going in to ask for more, where we were having burned through that money and having been promised by 3i that we're going to get another $8 million. We were now basically up against the ropes where they had actually brought in somebody who was from the UK, who was a publishing expert, to kind of find out why I had spent the money so quickly. And I was still in my late 20s at the time. And he had this meeting with the rest of the staff. We had all the directors of 3i there as well. It was right in the middle of town, so I'd kind of taken my motorbike and I'd headed off from the office, and they were like, "Oh, go get some more money, Roger, so we can keep, cover the payroll." And I had shown up at this meeting, and this this expert or publisher, he actually got up in front of everyone. He said, "Well, there's actually a reason that they ran out of money, and it's basically that Roger's just a bad CEO." And I was like, "What? I'm a bad CEO?" And they're going, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, he's a visionary, but doesn't know how to run a company. So what do you suggest?" And he goes, "Well, I think we should still give him another $1 million, right? Because we put money in already. But we should get him to report, to us. We'll put a committee together that he has to report to, and he can't make any big decision without basically reporting to them." And I remember listening to this and thinking, geez, I brought these guys in to be my investors, and now I'm going to be reporting to them. And they've got more shares in the business than I have as a result of this restructuring deal. So I was sitting here listening to all of this and just seeing red. And I remember we got to the end of it and they all were so like, this is such a done deal, like $1 million. It's like who would say no to that? This is fantastic. And they said, okay, Roger, so we're happy, let's vote on it. So they voted. They were like, yep, we should do this. And they said, okay, so Roger, there's the deal. Are you happy with that? And they hadn't actually asked me up until that point what I thought of the deal, because they thought I'd just take any deal. And I said, sorry, I'm not taking it. And they're like, what? You're not taking the deal? Like, what other options do you have? And I said, walking out of here. And I got up and I walked out. And I still remember going downstairs and getting on my motorbike, and I just saw this haze. And I got on my motorbike and I was going to go back to the office, and I realized I couldn't go back to the office because I'd been working for like 6 months, like when I didn't know if the money was coming in or not. And we'd been burning through the money, and we had a plan that was going to get us to some great success, but obviously that wasn't going to happen without money. And so I didn't go to the office. I went, I took a turning, and I thought, well, I can't face even the team who thought I was going to come back with money, and now I'm going to tell them they don't have a job anymore and we don't have a business anymore. So I couldn't go do that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go home. And I started heading home, and then I thought, what am I going to say to my wife? What am I going to say to Renata? She's like thinking today's the day I'm going to save the company, and I've got like school fees to pay, and I got to basically look after the house, and I have zero, like nothing for them either. I'm like, I can't go home either. And I still remember at that point, I was like, well, I'll just go down to the beach. So I basically like went down. If you know Singapore, there's like, you know, East Coast highway is right along the beach, and I just took the motorbike along there, and I stopped at like a Starbucks which had a view over the beach, and I just sat there. And frankly, I was just in shock about what I had said, because I couldn't understand it. You know, if I was like 5 years earlier, my mid-20s, and someone had come along and said, okay, here's $1 million. What we want you to do, you can still run your business, but we just want you to report into these 3 people. I would have said, sure, why not, right? Like, what's the big deal about that? Like, you know, like there's $1 million there, right? So I was like, what happened that I suddenly said no to this and sabotaged everything that I have? Like, this makes no sense. So I was trying to process this, and I got my journal out. You saw my journal that I shared yesterday. I got my journal out, and I just started writing. Just whatever showed up. It's like, what's going on, Roger? Like, are you crazy? Are you mad? Like, what's happening? And as I sat there, and I sat there for like 5-6 hours, like the whole day I sat there. But as I sat there, a transformation happened very gradually, not the way I thought it would happen, but it happened because, first of all, I was at such a loss as to what I was going to do with my life. But it was also as a loss as to who I was. I didn't get how I could make such a rash decision and walk out on $1 million when I thought I was growing the business to create wealth for others and for me as well. And obviously that couldn't be the case, because why would I walk away from $1 million and create so much pain for myself if that was the case? I didn't know about wealth dynamics at the time, right? I didn't know that when someone tries to take your freedom away as a creator, then you're just going to see red and just walk away, because your freedom is more precious than any money. I didn't know that at the time. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking, well, what do I want, Roger? Like if it's not the money, what is it that I actually want? So I started thinking of all the things I might want, right? And I thought, well, it's not really things, right? Like, you know, it's not buying a car. It's like, well, it's probably what experiences, right? It's not the big house or the car or the yacht or anything like that. It's the experience of having these things. So I'm like, okay, well, have I experienced driving a nice car? Have I experienced a nice meal, right? Have I experienced, you know, like a beautiful sunset? Like, what are the things that I have experienced through life? And I started writing down all the things that I was experiencing and thinking, I didn't actually need to own anything because I've experienced all these different things. But as I was starting writing this list of all the things I'd experienced, I then got back to the point about if I've experienced those different things, then what is it left to experience? You know, what do I really want to experience in life? And I started thinking about what I might want to experience. Well, maybe I want like a nicer sunset. You know, maybe I want a better meal. You know, maybe I want a more, you know, amazing company. Like, well, what is it? And I thought, well, is that actually what I really want? And I was like, no, I don't want any of those things. Like, because I really have all the things that I wanted to experience. And so at that point, as I was going through this whole thing of writing things down, and I started looking for anything else I might have to live for. And again, remember, I couldn't go back to the office. I couldn't go back home. Anything else I could live, why would I live if I've already experienced all these things? And so as I sat there kind of thinking about this, looking at the waves, seeing people walk by, and just knowing every one of these people is going to die one day. They're all going to die. And what are they going to have to show for it when they die? What am I going to have to show for it when I die? If I've already experienced everything I want to experience, how would I feel if I died now? I remember having that thought, and there's a very bit, like East Coast Highway is a very busy road. It's like the cars are zooming around, there's trucks zooming around. And I thought, you know what? I'd be okay if I died right now. You know, I've experienced everything there is to experience. I'm only 30, but I've done it. And I don't want to like live for the rest of my life just trying to experience the same things again. And I got to this point where there was this massive gaping hole inside me because I was like I had nothing to live for. And I also saw these cars zooming by and I'm like, all right, well, maybe this is it. Maybe I just pack my bags, leave the bag here, leave a little note, and I just walk out into the road, right? And I just decided that's what I was going to do. And I basically got a cup of coffee and I just drank the last coffee and I was sitting there and I just went into this kind of like space of completion. Now I'd had that experience before and I'd had it in video games because I was playing video games with my younger brother. There was something that would happen in video games when you finished the game, when you won the game. It didn't just finish and go, that's it, the credits roll and that's it. No, what would happen is you'd get to the end and you'd be pushing to just win this game. And finally you'd win it, right? And then there's this like big gap. There's a space, there's a hole, there's an abyss where you're then like, oh, after all those months of playing this game and it's over. Then what happens though, in all these different games is up pops this thing which says bonus round. So you finish, like you won, and then suddenly this thing comes up saying bonus round, and he's like, oh, there's more. And so then you get into this bonus round and you're playing the bonus round, and what happens in the bonus round is something very magical. When you're playing the bonus round, you're no longer trying to win anymore because you already won. So you're not even trying to win. And what happens in the bonus round is you actually start realizing you're enjoying it way more, given that you already won, because now you get to experience everything fully, the whole game, all the best bits of the game, you get to experience all of it without having to prove anything, without having to be anyone, without feeling you're not good enough, because of course you're good enough, you won. So I just paused and stopped and I go, oh my God. And suddenly from this abyss, like rushed in this thought, which is, I've got a bonus life. Like my life is over. I've finished my, like anyone who thinks that reincarnation can't happen, it happened. It happened to me. I basically just was born again and suddenly I was like, I got this whole bonus life. What would I want to do if I had nothing to get? And of course, if you had nothing to get, the only thing left to do is to give. And I got my journal out. I just started writing, what's my life all about? What's my mission all about? What am I, if there's landing on this planet and having already achieved everything, what would I want to do with my life to give back? Now, by the way, you could say, well, that was just all in your imagination, Roger, right? That whole kind of messaging and what happened there. But I just heard of all those people in my life who'd always said to me, Roger, it's never about the money. It's not even about the success, to be honest. It's about something much, much bigger. And there were signs that I had already seen. You know, there's books that are out there like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and others, where they basically are talking about a secret, like this secret that all the best people know about. Andrew Carnegie was the person, the first billionaire ever, and he was the person who contracted Napoleon Hill to write the books that he wrote. First of all, The Carnegie Secret, and then Think and Grow Rich, because Carnegie had the secret that he thought everyone should know about. And Napoleon Hill decided not to explicitly say what the secret was because he thought people would think he's crazy. So instead of actually saying what the secret was, he basically said, you've got to keep on reading the book over and over again, and eventually you'll get it. And my first book, which became a bestseller, Wink, is the same secret, right? It's the same thing that's in there. What comes after number 29 is something in there that you have to keep on reading over and over again. I want to share that secret with you because I think that if you really get this, suddenly your entire plan for the year, in fact, maybe for the rest of your life, will change. And I want to do this before you actually have a chance to share with everyone your vision of where you want to go for the future, like what that picture looks like. And all those fears you might have about failing, that maybe this might change the way you think about those as well. So let me share my screen with you where, what I was just talking about there in terms of a master's moment, that was my master's moment. It was that moment when suddenly the curtain got pulled back and I saw reality for what it was. This is what Andrew Carnegie also saw as the true secret as well. And if you're thinking, well, maybe it's just me and Andrew, here's some people you might recognize. This is Elon Musk talking just a few years ago about, is life even real? Is reality a made up thing? And he's talking here about video games and what's going on with video games. And he's talking very specifically about a paper, which is a probability paper, which is written by Nick Bostrom. Are you living in a computer simulation? And he's been asked about this, like what's his belief on this? So let's have a listen to what he has to say.
If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality, just indistinguishable. Even if that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is right now, then you just say, okay, well, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing in the evolutionary scale. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and there would probably be, billions of such, computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
So he said the odds of being in base reality is 1 in billions, that the odds of us actually even being real are like 1 in billions. Now, by the way, this is something which Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's one of the best known scientists out there at the moment, was asked on a TV show, and listen to what he has to say.
Elon Musk says that we're living in a simulation. He's not the only person that theorizes this. Basically, we're in a video game being controlled by higher beings, and we're all just like in Super Mario Brothers.
Yes, I wish I had a good argument against that hypothesis, and I do not.
So he also, and if you can go look this up, like there are a number of people who actually believe this. This was Stephen Hawking's last paper, that we're all living in a hologram, that is all made up. This is the last paper before he died. He wrote about it as well. This all happened, by the way, after my experience, which happened now a good 20 years ago. This person here, George Smoot is the person who actually came up. He wrote this amazing book, which is called Wrinkles in Time. He won a Nobel Peace Prize for being the one that actually was able to show the ripples in background radiation, which proved the Big Bang. And he's actually done a TED Talk about you are a simulation and physics can prove it, where actually walks through this, and I've had the conversations with my son Luke about like if you were to build a reality, then you would build it around every one of our perception. And we all know that the way that science works today is it's based around the observer. So what I experience in time and what I experience in light is all built around my perception. What you've got is built around yours, just like in a multiplayer game, the actual program is built around ourselves. So all of this that we're talking about here is like, oh, well, we can think about kind of like this weird idea, and maybe it's just a theory. And maybe it's just something we're thinking about now because it happens to be a modern day age where we're getting into virtual worlds. Here is a reading list from Steve Jobs, right? What did Steve Jobs read? Steve Jobs carried one book with him everywhere he went around the world since he was ever kicked out of Apple. After he was kicked out of Apple, he went then to India for several years to find himself. And off the back of that, he came up with basically a number of books that became his reading biography. One of them, Autobiography of a Yogi. Yogi, if you read this book, is basically all about how we are living in an illusion. And he basically carried this with him everywhere. It's the one book that he downloaded on his iPad and carried it with him everywhere as well. And when Mark Zuckerberg was taking himself so seriously because he had a $100 million acquisition offer for Facebook, he basically contacted Steve Jobs and said, what should I do with this? Like, what's your advice? And thinking Steve Jobs would actually say, well, this is what you should do with your business. And instead he says, pack your bags, tell your team you're going for a couple of months and go to India. And that's exactly what Mark Zuckerberg did. He actually just packed his bag. Everyone thought he was crazy, but he did this back in the 1990s. He basically packed his bag. He went off to the Kamchi Dam ashram, which is the same one that Steve went to. And it was there that he realized the secret, the same one which I'm about to share with you right now again, and the same one which Steve Jobs got, that Mark Zuckerberg got, that the brightest minds in the world all got. And you might listen to this and go, I don't believe in that. And that's absolutely okay. But just know there's not a single person who actually has gone out and created history that I know of that hasn't actually subscribed to the same secret as well. In fact, Buckminster Fuller, when he was ready to commit suicide back in his when he was 30 years old, he says he walked into the lake in Chicago. And basically at that point, he's like, my life is over, right? Because he had missed the death of his daughter. He was totally in despair because he didn't know how to actually make his life work. And that's when he got the message, which is that this whole thing is an illusion. And if this is a game, you're playing it really badly. And so if this is a game, how do you really want to play this thing? And he actually decided that he had one final chance. He actually wrote this book called Guinea Pig B, which is basically guinea pig A messed up. Guinea pig B is an experiment. Next 56 years of his life is where he created all of his greatness. It can happen at any time. He was 30 years old when it happened to him. I was just 33 when it happened. No, sorry, 29, and then again at 33. It happened twice to me. But the whole point is that all these things that we're sharing with you here are about the fact that at some point, maybe you'll wake up, and when you do, and many of you already have gone through that process in one form or another, and you might not have even seen the signs of it. When you do, you suddenly change what you're capable of doing. You suddenly, because the universe suddenly sees that you get it. And so I'm going to just share with you in practical terms what that actually means if you were to just consider for a moment that Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, and everyone else I mentioned, Buckminster Fuller, that maybe there was an element of truth in their belief that we are simply an illusion. It's not even time. It is ourselves and that illusion as well. Let me share with you a couple of slides. This first slide here is from yesterday when we were talking about us being the light. This is exactly what Carnegie was talking about, where he says that when you realize that everything is down to your own intention, that this universe is your multiplayer game and you get to choose what that game is going to be. You want it to be a soap opera, you want it to be a drama, that's what it's going to be. You want it to be an epic adventure, that's what it's going to be as well. But we actually get whatever it is within our game that we choose it to be. If you've ever been to London, then you may have been to the Trocadero, particularly Circus, where you saw these 4 horses. These are the 4 horses of the apocalypse. It's the same 4 horses that are the horses of Helios. Helios is another word for Apollo, and Apollo is another word for what we talked about yesterday, which was Kairos, which is where you get to harness time, just like harnessing the 4 seasons. That's what the 4 horses represent, and they're in every culture. Here are the 4 horses that are in the Indian culture, and they are, as you can see here, carrying Arjuna, who is the archer god. So when we talk about the bow and the arrow, and we talk about precision, that was Arjuna. That's a whole sense of him going into battle. And you can see that he has got here Krishna, who is the blue god, the avatar. If you've ever seen the movie Avatar by James Cameron, it's about the fact that just like in that movie, we think we're real, but we're actually just an avatar in a movie where we're actually remote controlled from some other place. And here you've got Krishna, who is mentoring up with Arjuna. And there's a story that takes place in the Mahabharata that you can read about, which is exactly the same story as Steve Jobs' story. It's exactly the same story as Stephen Hawking's story. And it's basically the story of the awakening. And in this story, I'm going to just paraphrase it to you so you can kind of like just see that this is something that's not new. It's not something that just Elon Musk came up with. It's something that's actually been in history in every culture back 5,000 years. And in this story, Mahabharata story, what's happening is that Arjuna has been sent into battle because there's this kind of like evil dude called Kana who has been destroying everyone and destroying everything. And he's like, well, I better go to a battle. And he's then like sent a message from Kana who says, you come to battle with me and you're gonna not only suffer a painful death, but you are going to have your entire family guaranteed wiped out, because even if I die, I have given instructions to others to make sure that you die and so do your family. So now you've got Arjuna saying, holy cow, is it seriously worth that sacrifice for me to actually go into war and battle this guy? Do I really want to do this? And so basically he turns to his mentor, to Krishna, and he says, Krishna, what is your advice? Krishna says to him, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he pretty much says to him, what is your problem that you actually think that you're real? Like, don't you get you're actually just a story in a book? You're just a character in a book. And if you're trying to do things that are there just to serve you or just to, cause you to have a convenient life, no one's going to want to read that story. Like, you are in this story for other people to read. Do you have something worthwhile to do or to say? Because if not, no one's going to remember you anyway. And effectively, he was like just laying it out to Arjuna that Arjuna himself was a fiction, was just basically this made up thing, and said, like, are you living a life worth telling? Now, when he said this, Arjuna's like, what in earth are you talking about, dude? Like, I'm a real person doing real things. I feel real pain. And so what happened was Krishna then unveiled back and actually then started talking in verse. You'll find this in the Mahabharata. It's the one book within a book that actually is what he then explains as the true nature of reality. And it's called the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita is the basis of everything we have today, which we call yogas. And yogas are not what you think about in terms of like, tying your body up in a pretzel. Yogas are about a heavenly or a transient practice or value brought down into humanity, which means that we get to experience something heavenly or something divine in the world today. And he says there's 3 main yogas. And I'm going to share these with you because you can take this as a practical way to not just think about today, but think about all of your days going forward right now. And it took me several years to get to all of this. The reason we have the Bali resort, the reason that we use all of the names of the gods there, the Trimurti, is not because it's a religious thing, it's because it's a philosophical thing, which actually comes down to a core basis root, which is in both the Hindu and also the Buddhist culture. And it is one which is called samsara. Samsara is the cycle of life, which we see in all of these different mandalas. And it is basically the cycle of suffering. It's what Buddha went through to say, why is it that people go through this cycle of time? It's cyclic of like, birth, of death, of desire, of suffering. It's like, why do we go through all of this? And it's we're awakening from this illusion where you realize not just is time illusion, but we are all an illusion, that we're all part of a movie, that this is liberation, right? Which is called moksha, it's called nirvana. This is when we actually suddenly wake up and we go, holy cow, what on earth was I even thinking? And what happens in this story is that Krishna, who turns to Arjuna, says there are 3 different yogas, which is where we get all the other yogas. In fact, there's something called the Trimurti, which are the 3 gods. Brahma is creation, and then Vishnu is perseverance or sustainability. And then you then have got Shiva, who is destruction. And this creates the cycle of the 3 yogas. We have got the first one here, which you've all heard of, which is Kama, the actor. This actually, by the way, this one here is destruction, right? This is Shiva. Like Shiva shows up and just creates havoc. So many of you have gone through this week right now without any idea of the illusion, any of this stuff out here. You're totally like, what on earth is Roger even talking about right now? I'm working on my plan. I gotta go make some money. And if you're in that space where you're actually like here as Kama the actor, there's a very, very good chance that you're gonna be totally stressed out because you don't even know what the plot is. You don't even know what the story is. And you're trying your best to create the story to have a great life. But no one ever wanted to hear a story, once upon a time, someone lived happily ever after, the end. Like, that's not a good story. But that's the one that the actor wants because that's the easiest one to have. So what's really important here is to get that the actor almost is the last to ever know what's going on. Have you noticed that? If you're watching a movie and you've got the actor and he's like, I'm on top of the world, and you just know you're watching the movie, eating a popcorn and going, there's going to be a fall in the moment. You know it. How come the actor doesn't know this? Or the actor's like, everything's gone wrong. They've just lost their family. Like the mafia have come in, like gunned them all down, and you go, oh, this is going to be such a great movie, right? Because you know what's coming next from the worst to the best, whereas the actor never knows these things. And if you're living your life as the actor, then this would have been a really tough week because you're constantly like battered up against basically all the things that are your karma, all the things that are the ripple effect of other people's ripples. And so because of all of that, it's like, oh, what does this person think of this? What should I do over here? And if you continue on that pathway as that actor, then you're in for a very, very tough life because you're living it on the crest of the waves, and those waves keep on crashing. So what's the next step? How do you move beyond that? And the key to this is understanding that there is a second type of yoga, whereas the first one, which is a practice of karma and being aware of the ripples, just knowing, there are ripples here. And yes, there's part of me, Roger, which is Roger the actor, that shows up and lives the human experience. There is a second element here as well, which is called jhana. Jhana, by the way, is all about being awakened from the illusion. This here is the director. It's when the part of me, Roger, that wakes up and goes, holy cow, I get to decide on the story. And it's not about Roger having a great, easy life. It's about him having a story worth telling. So what am I going to make that story this week? Every Sunday, I get together with myself, Director Roger, and I say, how was the last week's story? How do I want to make next week's story? Sometimes if Actor Roger had a really, really easy week, I'd be like, okay, well, that's a pretty boring story now. Let's stretch him this next week, right? Let's lift him up to get into these spaces here. And Actor Roger shows up on the Monday, and he's got an uncomfortable week, but at the same time, it stretches him, and it makes it a story worth telling. Right? Every time I've set a goal for myself, New York Times bestseller, listing on New York Stock Exchange, I didn't do it because the actor was like, I want that stuff. The actor would rather have an easy life. I did it because the director said there has to be a story worth telling here. There has to be something which is going to be left as a legacy, and it ain't going to happen by just sitting around having an easy life. So the director, Roger, is the one who is aware of the illusion and is able to actually separate out from that illusion. And that then leads to the third thing, right? And the third thing, which is called devotion, which is up at the top level here. This level here is all about devotion, and it's about something which is no longer the actor or the director. We're now talking about something up here, which is called the witness. This is the person watching the movie. This is the person who is timeless, where they see the illusion for what it is. And that doesn't mean that they're not willing to still witness it. like every day waking up to the magic of this incredible film set that we all have. Is just, once you become super aware of this, this is more than just living in the present, it's the present living inside of you. You know, there's that great parable which is told by Deepak Chopra actually in his book Synchrodestiny. And he says there are two monks and they are debating something. They go back to the master and they say, Master, you know, we've got a disagreement here. We saw a flag blowing at the top, like moving at the top of the hill. And he says that it's the flag that's moving. And I said, it is the wind that's moving. Which one of us is right? And the master looks at both of them and says, neither of you are right. It's your consciousness that's moving. Once you realize that basically all of this stuff that we've imagined up and that we're doing at the moment, that if you're living a small life, well, that's the choice you're making, which has nothing to do with playing it safe, but everything to do with not getting that this game is here to be played once. And if you're here to play this game once, why on earth would you actually play that small game when you can play any game whatsoever? So this whole element of these three, and actually being and thinking about these three from the point of view of saying, okay, well, what is it that I actually want to be able to create, not just for myself, but for those who are going to actually read my story, read where I'm at. And every day am I being that witness? Every morning at 6 in the morning, I get up and I'm the witness. I'm not the actor. I'm not rushing around doing things that Roger, the human, needs to do. I'm not the director, the one who's actually looking as the unconscious onto the conscious. I'm the superconscious that's actually just experiencing what it is to be 7 billion people on the planet, loving, hurting, dreaming, working, playing. Like I'm all of them all at once. And each one of you are exactly the same as well. The biggest illusion is that we're not connected. The biggest illusion is that we're separate from time. But the moment we connect it all together, we suddenly realize that maybe just like I was when I was sitting there in Singapore looking out at the waves, maybe we're here for a bigger purpose. And maybe it is time to have a bonus life. Maybe it's time to actually say there's nothing you can do that will allow you to fail. And it's time to move and shift yourself forward. And the way to do it is through the promises, is to know that some things will never change and some are always moving and will never stay the same. A-E-I-O-U actually comes as the 5 vows, which are the 5 promises. When David basically got Goliath right between the eyes, he did it with one of 5 stones. Those 5 stones represented the 5 hours, which we actually see as the 5 planets, which are actually going out there in the sky. This here, by the way, is the actual diagram of Solomon's temple, which was drawn by Isaac Newton. Solomon's temple, this is Gematria. The first of the kings of Israel was Saul. Saul, S-L, stands for soul. The second one was David, who was the one who actually fought Goliath. DVD is divide. When you have soul and you divide soul, you get the soul of man. Soul of man is where we get Solomon. And so Solomon's temple is the soul of the template for the soul of man. It's basically the entire universe where we're the microcosm of the macrocosm, and where there's a code within this where A, E, I, O, U are the keys that actually unlock the consonants. So vowel become vowels and constant becomes consonants. And you can see here, A gives you B, C, D, E gives you F, G, H. This is the Holy of Holies where the 10 Commandments, which were the promises of another era gone by, was housed. And then you have I, which unlocks these 6, O unlocks these 6, U unlocks these 6. And this gives you the full structure of the alphabet. And these 5 link to the planets. Mars was the triangle, which became A. Venus was the square, which became E. That's A and E, which is Mars and Venus, which became Adam and Eve. This became humanity. The I, which is the trident of Jupiter, and O, which is the rings of Saturn, that became I and O, but it also became 1 and 0, which is where we actually get the binary code. And we're living in a digital age where the 1s and 0s are growing like crazy, and we're wondering how humanity is going to keep up. And if you're saying, well, where is the value if this is leverage, right? If we can leverage with digital like never before, then where can we get to the value? And the answer is with the A and the E, right? We don't have to go out there to be more mechanical. We just have to be more human. And realizing that the way to master money is to do exactly this, because I and then O and Mercury, which was basically the basis of alchemy, became the U. That was a spiral. This becomes the basis for money, because money is nothing more than an I, O, U. Our ability to be able to actually link everything we're doing to value and link everything we're doing to the growth of this universe that we're in comes down to these 5 elements, which actually happen to be in every single one of the words that we actually utter. The only ones that are 3 outside of that are the spirit vowels, which is W, H, and Y, which spells Y. And that is the key question, which allows us to unlock all of these promises. And if we actually take one step further and realize that, you know, the ancient systems already gave us this knowledge, which allowed us to be thinking very differently about how we go about making sense of this universe. This goes one step further into space, which is what's happening here, and time, which is what's happening here. And in time, a pack of cards actually allows you to see how an entire calendar gets linked to the I Ching. In fact, the pack of cards was designed in China as a way to export the I Ching in a way that everyone would be able to understand. So you've now got what was Mars or Adam, which became air and also wood, becomes what we have here as a tree, which are the clubs. We have the garden, which is earth, which becomes the spade. We have the people side over here, which is blaze energy, the summer, which becomes the heart. We have the structure side, which is over here, the winter, which becomes the diamond. And all of this links into 1 year, 4 seasons. You've got 12 different picture cards, which are the months, which also are the constellations. You've got the 13 moon cycles, which is how many cards there are in a particular suit. Of course, there's 52 cards in total. And if you actually even count the 1 for the ace, the 2 for the 2, the 3 for the 3, all the way through for the entire season, you end up with 91. And you multiply 91 by 4, and you end up with 366. And if you're thinking, wait a minute, there's only 365 days in the year, that's because the U, which is the middle, there's one extra card, which we haven't mentioned yet, and that is the Joker. So think about that for a moment, right? Like, who are you? You are the Joker. As they say in Batman, the way to be the Joker is don't take everything so seriously. What happened that moment when I was there looking out at the sea and thinking I can't face my wife and my family, I can't face my staff, is I just started laughing like crazy. In fact, the Starbucks dude came out and said, "Are you okay?" I was just like laughing so that there was like streams coming down my eyes. And I'd heard about how with enlightenment, you just burst out laughing because you just realized just how ridiculous the whole illusion was, because I, up until that point, had taken myself so seriously. And when I realized that I'm the Joker, I trump everything and there's nothing to lose anymore. There's no way to lose. Whatever I do is all part of this experience. When I felt that, and I felt that in my soul, it allowed me to go back to my team, allowed me to go back to my wife and just tell them everything's going to be okay. And from that day onwards, with zero failure, I've gone out, just lifted myself from level to level. Not to say there aren't things I learned, not things that I'll fail at, but I don't see them as failure anymore. That's the way I used to in the past. And more importantly, I'll always stretch myself to a high level, because just like Arjuna, there's a calling. Just like Steve Jobs, Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, they're driven, not because they're trying to prove anything, but because there's an obligation for them to have to play the game the way the game was actually designed. So I want to share all that with you because I know this is a much longer video than normal. I wanted to share with you the fact that as you're going on this pathway, I've left some slides in here which actually give you an insight into my journal, where I'm actually sharing. Nosha to Ipsum talked about Apollo, who is the god of light. This here is on the Temple of Apollo, which is also the Temple of Delphi, which you'll find in the Matrix, where this actually was the sign above it, which is know thyself. And this is a symbol for gold. And this goes through every one of the pages that leads you through from the concept, first of all, of what light is and how it actually links to time, and how time links to space, and how all of this links to the fact that we're here on this planet for a period of time. And it's up to us whether or not we become a victim to that time or whether we become a master to it. And I really hope that from this, you've had inspiration being on this journey with us, that you won't take yourself too seriously and realize that with that comes a gift, which is your ability to really go out there and play this game the way the game was meant to be played. Think bigger and realize whatever level you get at, to provided that you're willing to have the universe bend towards your story and your game, you're going to have the story worth telling. And with that, I am going to say good luck with today. Good luck with the coming year. I look forward to sharing the journey with you as well. I think it's going to be an amazing journey over this next decade. And I look forward to catching up with you again very soon.